This is Mike at Triple Water Astrology. Welcome back to my podcast, and I'd also like to welcome previous guest Leigh Samuel is back with us. Hi, Leigh.
Hi, how's it going?
Fantastic. We have a polemical topic today for sure, but very important, and I haven't heard it discussed much lately or yet. But we're going to talk about the 2024 presidential election. A very exciting and, like I said. It seems like a lot of people are it's so divided in our country, and I hope we can. My objective today is to do an objective analysis of not who I want to win, but who I believe will win based on the charts. So I'm going to try to be start out right away being objective, and let's see what's in the charts. And I know. Like I said, a lot of listeners are going to be on one side or the other, I'm sure. I'm going to set the table, and Leigh, you'll definitely get all kinds of opportunities to join in the analysis. But I want to set the table for this actually rather serious topic. And by the way, we could talk about it all day, but I'm hoping for about half an hour. And if we go over, that's just fine. But like I said, we have to set a somewhat of a time limit here because, like I said, I certainly could talk about it all day. So anyway, my Mercury retrograde, and we got Mercury retrograde starting in a few days. So my own natal Mercury retrograde will try to be more succinct here at the start. Okay, so indeed, we have an important topic, and I need to set the table. So here we go. I'm looking at the event chart for November 5th, 2024, and the place I'm using is Washington D.C. and the time is 8 a.m. However, we need to keep in mind that it's an all-day event, and there's complications. For example, many people are going to vote early, so we're going to ignore some of those nuances. And also, I'm making the assumption RFK Jr. seems to be a very viable, I should say, or popular candidate for a third-party candidate. But I'm going to assume that either Joe Biden or Donald Trump will win. So certainly, Leigh, if you have thoughts about RFK Jr., no worries, and I probably will too as the discussion goes on. But I'm not including RFK Jr. in the discussion for among other reasons. But I don't think there's even a birth time that's been verified for RFK Jr. So anyway,
Yeah.
Okay, event chart. The moon starts at about 28 Sagittarius, and that's conjunct galactic center. Very importantly, the moon moves to throughout the day to about 5 Capricorn by the time evening rolls around in Washington, D.C. Mm-hmm. So moon moves about 7 or 8 degrees and very interestingly changes signs during the day. Okay, so transiting Pluto will be in Capricorn. So right away I thought, I wonder if that favors the establishment candidate, in other words, Joe Biden. However, Pluto in the event chart is in the analytic degree of Capricorn, so I wonder if that favors the challenger. So right away we have kind of a conundrum. With Pluto, very important, however, Pluto is also Pluto is United States birth chart. Pluto is very close to transiting Pluto on that day. So essentially, we're still talking a return for the U.S. even though it's over. So in that way, and many others, I'm seeing it's a critical election this year. Mm-hmm. We also are seeing in that chart, the event chart, this is occurring during a Jupiter-Saturn square. The square lasts for literally over a year. And at that time, during the election, both planets are retrograde, and they're still in Pisces and Gemini, respectively. Okay, so we got the major planetary action is with Pluto and Jupiter-Saturn, it seems. We have 4 retrograde planets. Besides Jupiter, Saturn, we have Uranus and Neptune retrograde. So in order of orbit, Jupiter through Neptune, those planets are retrograde. Something to consider. Pluto is not retrograde. Neither is Mercury or any other planets. Sun is in Scorpio, and that day it's at 13 Scorpio, which is a nuance because I believe election day can range from about November 2nd to 8th, but it happens to be on the 5th, and that day we're looking at Sun at 13 Scorpio. So Sun is always in mid-Scorpio, but can vary by a degree. For election day, Mercury and Jupiter are in mutual reception. Very interesting. So that offsets Neptune. Neptune's long tenure in Pisces as a planet in dominion. So we have Mercury, Jupiter, Neptune. All of those planets are very oriented towards learning, scholarship, and knowledge. So again, I think if you look at mutual reception and dominion, those planets are pointing to a very important election this year. Chiron is at 20 Aries in the election chart, which is the same degree as U.S. natal Chiron. Very interesting. Again, how many times do we need a verification that this is a critical time for the U.S. this election? For those who enjoy the hypotheticals, Moon will form a yod with Admetus and Vulcanus at the base of the yod. So Moon will be at the focal point of a yod before the polls close, and that will be late in the day. Transiting Hades, again, one of the hypotheticals, is within a 2-degree orb of U.S. natal Sun, and very importantly, squaring U.S. natal Saturn. So we've got Saturn in the U.S. chart is in Libra, and then we've got a very karmic and past-oriented kind of transit with Hades, and perhaps sinister. I don't think anything bad is going to happen during the election or as a result of it necessarily, but it's something to consider. Hades, to me, is about past indiscretions, and both sides are certainly flinging mud in that regard. It's already getting heavy, and we're still about 7 months away from the election. Okay, so and about my last point about the election chart, all of that stated, the event chart is not necessarily highly noteworthy, and what I mean by that is what I'm seeing is despite either candidate being elected, the U.S. will carry on well. But as I said, this seems to be shaping up as quite a critical election, and it will create a very different future direction for our country and the entire world, depending on who gets elected. So, Leigh, I'd be happy to hear your reaction to that. What you think, what your initial research shows. Do you want to make a prediction or not today? Either is fine.
I do want to make a prediction. I agree with you. It's kind of muddy with RFK. I did look over his chart, but it's hard because it's not exactly accurate. And then his new selected running mate. And I didn't really get a whole lot from that as far as trying to tie his chart in to the election chart and see if I saw any energy there. Didn't really see much.
Okay.
So I agree with you that I'm thinking that it's either going to be Donald Trump or Joe Biden.
Okay.
Yeah. So as far as that goes, looking at their charts in relation to the election chart, I do think it is an important day, and it will be monumental. I went through several charts, including the election day and their natal charts, and it's really neck and neck. So it was hard for me, but
okay.
I didn't know if you wanted to go through what you kind of thought and what you deliberated on.
I'd love to hear. Again, the ball is in your court, but I'd love to hear your analysis. What's if you would lead up to why you're choosing either candidate? That would be fantastic.
Okay.
Astrologically, of course.
So when you take Joe Biden's chart and then you add it with the, I also used November 5th. 2024 Washington, D.C., and then I did change it to 8 a.m. just to, have simplicity there. And so when I add Joe Biden to that, he's a Scorpio. And so I already feel like, given his experience and then also the kind of feel with the election and how it resonates with his chart, like you were saying with some of that, is this a familiarity thing? Are we, home? Maybe. I also like to do something called zodiacal releasing. It's another technique by an astrologer named Vedius Valens. And what it does is it takes your life based in relation to your lot of fortune and your lot of spirit and divides your life into chapters. And it can kind of show highlights where there might be peaks. When I did either one of their charts and then delineated from the zodiacal releasing, both of them had some peaks, some energy. Their skin is definitely in the game, so to say. But it was hard to see a pop of energy on either one of them where I thought, okay, this is going to happen. It's overwhelming. So then what I did is I went to Kamala's chart and looked to see if I saw any energy there. Okay, there's some movement, nothing really huge. And then we don't know yet who Donald's going to pick.
Exactly.
So I was hoping I could get that and figure it out, but I don't know. So, yeah, that's going to be something that's to be determined. But with what I've got, I think I'm adding them together. I really feel like the energy looks a little bit more favorable for Donald. And so I am putting my guess there that he will be elected.
Would you say are you going all in, or would you say it's more like a percentage, like it's more like 60-40 Trump or 75-25, something like that?
Depending on his running mate, I just feel like the energy is a little bit more favorable for him. Despite the fact that there are going to be some trials and tribulations there for him. We could go 75-25, like 25 Biden, 75 Donald Trump.
Okay, that's quite fair. Wow. Okay, so I reached. I'm not making a prediction. I reached somewhat of a same conclusion. I see more pluses for Trump. Like we talked about last time, listeners may be a little disappointed in my methodology. It's a little bit. I wouldn't say it's simplistic, but it's more basic and routine. I just use the tri-wheel. I'm a big fan of progressions, and of course the transits on that day is for such an important mundane event. Listeners should recall. Indeed, we can't just look at the charts and say someone is going to win. I disagree with that. For example, we could easily start talking about the state of the economy. That's very important for this cycle. People are thinking about Supreme Court nominations and the composition of the Supreme Court again. There's all kinds of nuances, and so far as the electorate, we're still months away from the election. Sentiments about the economy are not very good, it seems, right now among the general public. However, consumer sentiment seems to be picking up. Economic growth seems to be picking up. If someone isn't looking for a job, they may think their situation is reasonably good. So we have all kinds of factors to consider, and in the end, we just don't know for sure how voters are going to decide. And the other problem is we're talking about a small, relatively small segment of voters who are truly undecided. This is quite a dynamic election because both men have been president. One currently is, and one has been. Um, and people are generally decided about who they like and what they want and what they think each person can do. I don't really believe that debates are going to sway a lot of people one way or the other. And like we mentioned, the RFK Jr. We don't know yet uh, if that's going to draw more Democrats to vote independently or Republicans, or who the big question in social media lately, and then the pundits are asking who's it going to hurt more, with RFK seeming to get a lot of attention. Uh, so that we have a lot of unknowns, and one other, it's fun to play around with the electoral map. Yesterday I was doing that, and I found a way for Trump to win without Pennsylvania and without Michigan.
Oh.
So he could still win without either one of those states. If Trump wins Michigan, there's still a way for him to lose. So we have a lot of the problem is, like you alluded to earlier, we have what could be a quite close election, and it could boil down to just a few states or even one, and less than 50,000 or even maybe 10,000 votes among one state or a few deciding the election. Did you consider strategy of the candidates, and what do you think about the swing states? What about that scenario? Do you think, although it seems like Trump may have some astrological advantages, do you think the swing states could still move towards Biden, and that would win the election for Joe Biden?
I don't know. It doesn't seem like there's much support, even with the controversy that's going on, where Trump's having to deal with a lot of legal dealings. It
Yes.
seems like he's floating above them. And it seems like despite all these rulings that have gone down and his troubles, people are still overwhelmingly supporting him. So I don't see people wavering. I think the economy does have a lot of weight, and people aren't happy, and they felt a lot of success with Trump, and they're looking to return to it. So I don't know that there's going to be that much of a sway in those swing states for Biden. It feels like with Trump, they got a taste of quote unquote something new, and then there's an overwhelming want to return to something new, despite everything else going on behind the scenes.
Certainly. Also, it seems like the vice presidential pick is. I wonder if Trump is going to move forward with that pretty quickly, or I don't know. He has plenty of time, but on the other hand, he may not want to wait too long. That seems like I can imagine a case where Trump seems like a kind of a maverick type, of course. I mean, we know Trump is the maverick candidate and president. However, I can imagine a scenario for sure where the running mate choice may not help him, or quite intriguingly, it may not help him in the way that he expects.
Yes.
Have you considered that?
Yeah, well, the thing that was striking for me, if you just take the election chart and you superimpose it with Trump's natal chart, the thing you see is that Uranus is directly on his MC. And I thought that was striking because, here's someone, because I agree with you, trying to be objective when you're trying to pick from an astrological standpoint who will win. You don't want your own personal feelings or politics to enter that discussion. And so just purely looking at this, I'm like thinking with all the stuff he's got going on, how is he going to do this presidential race? People have dropped out for less with less stuff going on in their life. But you've got this Uranus directly on his MC. And
Yes.
that's something where I'm like, the man has a lot of luck. He's got, strong Jupiter signatures with his Sag moon. The moon's returning to Sag for this election day and resonating with him. And then on top of it, you've got Jupiter plunked right down on his north node.
Yes.
And to me, it just seems like he's going to pull it out. He's going to be able to do it.
Yes.
I don't know how. I can't tell you why, but it just looks like the luck's on his side.
Certainly, I've noticed the transits that you mentioned, brilliant observations. It just hit me when you said Uranus on the midheaven. It just hit me. Trump he has the art of he's a marketer, he's a communicator, he's a salesperson, he's a businessman. With Uranus on the midheaven, he is a real genius at broadcasting his message.
Yeah.
So that you just prompted me to think of that. He's going to use the airwaves and so on to do what he does best. However, have you considered? I'm very fascinated by. Biden is probably going to go through the more traditional strategy of spending a lot of money, a lot of ads, more conventional type of campaign. Mm-hmm. Do you think Trump? It struck me that Trump needs to be everywhere, kind of all at the same time, and he's zooming around on his plane, going from one state to the other, and giving speeches. But is that going to do more than just fire up his base, or is that going to work for the overall general election in getting independents to consider voting for him?
I don't know how much the independents are going to go either way. They may. It's almost like I don't know if it matters. I know that's weird to say, but I just really feel like there's a lot of people pulling for Trump, and then the voter turnout for him may outweigh whatever and the independent party has to contribute to the election. Like I don't know if it's going to be enough to, pull away from his support. It's nice that RFK is joining the party and kind of mixing things up and giving an alternative. Independents, I think, are probably going to go for Biden to keep him in office. I just don't know if it's enough.
Sure. And again, we're focusing more on astrology here than
yeah.
But like I said, with the mundane events, we can't just look at the charts and say case closed. I think it's a combination. For me, when I did the analysis, it's just a combination of voters considering, okay, we have inflation, and we have Team Biden telling us Bidenomics is fixing all of this. But the average consumer wants prices to be where they were at a few years ago, and inflation already baked higher prices into the cake. So that's the challenge Biden has, and maybe he can find a way to surmount it. But the challenge is convincing voters, well, I'm the way to go, even though prices are higher, or it's tough to find a job, or things are changing rapidly in the economy. I'm the guy. You can be confident in me, and then The problem is he either has to say his way is working when people think there's evidence that it isn't, or he has to blame Trump, which you're getting into kind of a voters' memories are fading about things. Except, well, like you perhaps you alluded to the fact that wow, Trump voters may think Trump really did a good job with the economy, even if he's bombastic and egotistical. But at the end of the day, he gives me the result I want. We had lower gasoline prices and other things were really humming in the economy. We had inflation at 2%, or if even that. And so anyway, sure. I wondered if I think to me, it's like I said, to me it all boils down to the swing states. We know California is going to vote for Biden. We know Texas is going to go Trump. Very interesting here in our own state, in Omaha, in our district. I believe our electoral vote went for Biden last time.
It did, yeah.
Do you have an opinion about our own city at this time? Do you think the electoral vote will go to Trump this time?
I seriously think it might. That's a hard one. I just feel like looking at the astrology, he's something is going to be weird, and it's going to turn things upside down, and he's going to be able to pull it out. I just feel like Sag energy is over the top, and it's brash, it's big, it's lucky, and I think he's just going to be able to ride that luck.
Certainly. Now, for listeners, okay, so I'm glad you mentioned Trump again. For listeners, the chart I use for Donald Trump, June 14, 1946, born in Jamaica, New York, and that's the time I use is 10:54 a.m. and that sets ascendant at the razor's edge of Virgo and Leo, but the ascendant is in 29 Leo for that birth time. Is that the birth time you use for Donald Trump?
Yep, that's
okay. No way I believe Trump is a Virgo ascendant. I know he's a Leo ascendant, but I know there's been rectifications, and I found this chart to work. But for listeners, you may have a different opinion about Trump's birth time, or know someone who does. However, what I noticed. You keep mentioning Jupiter and Donald Trump, and I 100% agree. Donald Trump has his sun and moon opposite, very close, and it's not the full phase yet. He's in the gibbous phase, if you want to split hairs, but it's very close to opposite. And Trump also has his karmic axis, in other words, North Node, South Node aligned with the Sun Moon, and he has Sun in Gemini. And then what's happening on the election day is Jupiter is at 20 Gemini on election day. So Trump is experiencing not only is Jupiter lining up with his important Sun, Moon, and karmic axis. Jupiter is also making really nice trines to natal Jupiter. So when I see a client and make predictions, I like to look at Jupiter for something good, of course. And Jupiter in an air sign natally, and then Jupiter transiting in an air sign is generally good. Of course, when it's the same sign, it's your Jupiter return. But for Trump, he has Jupiter in Libra, and then Jupiter in Aquarius or Gemini is a plus for Donald Trump. So I think that works well for him. And then Trump also has progressed Venus in Libra, making a nice trine to progressed Jupiter. And then progressed Venus is very close to joining a progressed Jupiter. Progressed Venus is at 24 Libra. Progressed Jupiter is at 25 Libra. So he has a lot of yeah, he's kind of you can't just go by one planet, but Jupiter is kind of the start of helping him to run the table, so to speak, which of course he badly wants to do. Of course, he wants to be president again. Um, However, I want to. I don't want to leave listeners with the impression I just looked at one chart, or have only good things to say about President Trump. President President Biden. He has natal and progressed Jupiter in Cancer. For example, so Trump is not the only person in the race with a favorable Jupiter. Um, the U.S. Sun, United States natal Sun, and Biden's progressed Jupiter are conjunct. That is quite powerful for an incumbent. So there's good things happening. Um, Indeed, there's a few things I don't like in Biden's charts. I don't want to give listeners kind of a laundry list, but one thing of interest. Why don't I run this by you? I see natal Jupiter and natal Sun, Mercury, Venus. Note the stellium in Scorpio. Sun, Mercury, Venus in Biden's chart. They're forming a grand water trine with transiting Neptune, and then progressed Mercury is the outlet of the grand trine. So Mercury is in Capricorn in Biden's progressed chart, late Capricorn. So that's very presidential and Saturnine and serious and authoritative. So are what we seeing? Well, of course, I'll let you interpret it as you wish, but are what we seeing? Communication is ultimately the key to whether Biden can retain the presidency.
That's interesting that you say that. I agree with that, and I hadn't even thought about that with the progress chart in that trine. Because one of the striking things that happens with that election chart, if you take it at 8 a.m., is that the transiting Neptune or transiting Mercury falls on his natal ascendant. And so I do think that is a big point there with that communication. And one of the things that I'm thinking is Mercury is transiting and it's in Sagittarius. I think it's about ready to go retrograde there. I got to look at that.
Oh, good point. I will have to go back and see what's going on with Mercury.
Yeah, and so then that does beg the point. You've got Mercury in Sag, and then will it go retrograde? And then, how will he be able to communicate? I don't know, because the other thing that I saw with him is that you've got Uranus transiting his 6th house, and there's been concern with his health and how he's doing. So, how will this go? But that just gives me some sort of positive inclination when you pointed out that trine, the progressed chart.
What I was thinking is what intrigued me about it to some degree was Neptune in Dominion is involved.
Okay.
So we're talking. One way to interpret Neptune would be mass communication, which I think is very interesting. Collective, of course, and I'm letting my own experiences dictate my perception of Neptune a bit. I try to be objective, of course, for clients and when I'm doing the mundane analysis and so on. But Neptune, indeed, of course, has quite a lot of possibilities for being malefic. So I wonder, is Joe Biden? He needs to send a clear message, of course, to voters, and I wonder if he thinks he is, but he's in reality he's not reaching voters in the way that he needs to or wants to. So I wonder if Neptune is very much a negative in that regard for Joe Biden. And what I thought was very interesting the outlet for that grand trine is progressed Mercury at 26 Capricorn. That is a critical degree for Joe Biden. So that could spell trouble if he's not very, very careful. Very, very briefly, I wanted to let listeners know I found something important for Trump. It sounds like, and we're just doing the analysis. We're not favoring one candidate, just saying what we think about who's going to win. I did see something very interesting and possibly negative for Donald Trump.
Oh.
His progressed moon is at 9 Scorpio.
Oh.
That is also a critical degree. So perhaps the charts are telling us that each candidate needs to be very careful and measured in how they approach voters. Otherwise, who knows? We may be talking about RFK Jr. Getting a kind of a number of votes approaching what Ross Perot did in 1992, I believe. So RFK Jr. could really have a good run. I don't think he's going to win at all. But what's interesting not only is Trump's progressed moon in a critical degree in Scorpio, which demands some caution for sure. Moon in her fall. The chart I use for the U.S. natal birth chart, I use the chart that has ascendant in Scorpio, and no less, that chart has ascendant at 8 Scorpio, which is a critical degree. So 8 to 9 Scorpio, the critical degrees, we're showing the U.S. natal ascendant and Trump's progressed moon at exactly or almost exactly that point in regards to U.S. natal chart. So I'm a little bit caught in thinking, well, is that good for Donald Trump because it's conjunct the U.S. natal chart? Are we done with the analysis? Can we just call it a race astrologically, or does that actually spell trouble? I do note, however, Trump's progressed moon is forming nice trines to Jupiter, Venus, and Sun in the U.S. natal chart.
Yeah.
The U.S. chart has a 4-planet stellium in Cancer, so I think we know natally that Joe Biden and Trump were promised to be president of the United States. But the reason, what's more interesting, we already know that, but the reason that's more interesting is I think Biden was able to do so because of his natal Jupiter in Cancer. However, what we're seeing is a very strong progression for Donald Trump connected to those 3 benefics in early Cancer in the U.S. birth chart. So that's about. I'm gratified for sure. We reached kind of the same conclusion.
Yeah.
I believe if the economy was humming and everyone thought everything was hunky dory, Trump would have a huge problem winning again. I think so. Yeah. What throws a wrench into everything with the conventional kind of analysis is Trump. Trump is the outsider, and that makes him look very good when the economy is not humming. And we seem to have good growth. We seem to have low unemployment. We seem to have inflation returning to normal. But voters, by and large, even consumer sentiment is improving. But voters, by and large, I believe, aren't buying that. Pardon the bad pun. They're not buying that the economy is good. Is good. They want. They're demanding. The voters are consumers. They're demanding. Give us what we want. We want it now. And Biden has not. To be very fair, I don't think Biden has been able to do that. we could say Congress spends the money and this reason and that, but at the end of the day, voters, it's what they feel when they go into the voting booth or vote early. And now there's a third party candidate. The time is not on Biden's side for the economy to improve. So based on that, plus some of the items I'm seeing among candidates' charts, I am agreeing with you. I'm not making a prediction yet, but I'm leaning towards Trump.
Yeah. It should be an interesting race. I'm definitely a lot of energy here. So, yeah.
Okay, well, I'll have to look more at your the methodology you mentioned. Very interesting. And did you have anything? I knew we were going to go a little bit over time here, but it's been fascinating. But there's no rush. Did you have anything else you wanted to add to the conversation?
No. I think you wrapped that up really well. That's a very succinct delineation where, I think we're both leaning towards that. Although, yes, I will say I'll make the prediction and we'll see how it goes.
Yep, as astrologers, that's all we can do. Okay, well, thanks, Leigh, for joining us. Did you want to give listeners your website or Facebook page or anything?
Oh, yeah, it's easy. I'm located everywhere at the Arc Astrology. ARC being ARC. So if you look me up, I'm at thearcastrology.com, and also on TikTok and Instagram and everything is the Arc Astrology.
Okay, perfect. Anyone listening, please follow Leigh if you haven't. And again, thanks so much for joining us, Leigh. This is Mike at Triple Water Astrology, and wishing listeners a happy election.
Thanks, Mike.